Welcome. The topic of today's shir is the benefits of humility, based on Parshas Balak. Throughout Parshas Balak, we find a number of midos, a number of character traits associated with the main character, the protagonist, Bilam ben Beor, the prophet of the nations of the world. I have counted 11 negative midos of Bilam. What we'd like to do today is to try to identify these midos and show a common characteristic, specifically through them being sourced mostly by Bilam's lack of anava, lack of humility, and his midah of gaiva, of arrogance, haughtiness, and exaggerated sense of self. The first midah, we'll go in general in the order of the parsha, the way they're identified, is breaching boundaries of accepted behavior and poritz geder. And this is identified in Parak. Most of these makoros are from Parak Chaf Beis. So in Pasuk Daled, Rashi speaks out this lashon about Bilam behim pertu geder ha'olam shebetchilu ha'yigadurim ba'arayis v'zen nosnatem eitzin l'hafker atzman l'znos. That Bilam's midah represented poritz geder, that there's some sort of accepted norm or boundary in society, and he went and pushed forth past that. This is what the Mishnah in Avos, which talks about Bilam's three main negative midas, mentions the words v'nefesh rechava, according to the Medrash Shmuel. And the basis of this desire to push past accepted norms is the tremendous desire for all physical items, which is taiva, as we'll expand upon more, and specifically in the area of immorality. The second midah of Bilam is chemdas mammon, the desire for money. This is identified in Rashi Pasuk Hey, Likro, where Rashi says, Hakriya haisa shelo ulhanaso she posik l'mammon harbe. That when Bilam was interfacing with Balak to go and curse Klal Yisrael, a main motivation for Bilam was that he should get a tremendous amount of money from Balak. In Pasuk Yud Ches, the Pasuk says, Vayan Bilam vayomer al avdei Balak im yitini Balak mlo beso kesef azav. Bilam makes mention that Balak should give him a house full of silver and gold. This clearly shows that Bilam had a tremendous, above and beyond the norm, desire to have a tremendous amount of money and become rich. And in fact, this was a primary motivating factor why Bilam consulted to Balak's plan, was in order that Bilam should have a tremendous financial windfall. Third midah of Bilam, which is the one we'll focus on the most as the source for all other midos, for all of other Bilam's negative character traits, is Bilam's desire for kavod and honor. We see this in Rashi to Pasuk Ches, when Rashi says, Im yal nichin lechas im bnei adam k'moslam elcha imachem, shemein kavodo kvodi laseis laloch im ella im sarim gedolim mikan. In this Rashi, it's mentioned the point that another motivating factor for Bilam to go, or at least a ma'akev factor that would prevent him from going, is if the entourage provided to Bilam was not according to the way he saw it, his degree of honor. That he needed to be accompanied by very, so to speak, honorable people. And if the entourage was not up to Bilam's level of honor, he would not go. And in Pasuk Yud Gimel, Rashi mentions the same thing. El im sarim gedolim mikam. I would need to go with greater officials than you. This is what's mentioned in the Mishnah Avos Parakeh Mishnah Chaf Beis as being Ruach Gavoa, an arrogant spirit. And as we're going to show, Be'ez Hashem, that this is truly a siba and a source for all of the other Bilam's negative midas. Fourth negative midah of Bilam is baseless hatred of Klal Yisrael. We find this in Rashi Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Rashi says, Mikansha Sinim Mekalkalas Es Ashura. Rashi is identifying that a peculiar reality we find that even though someone who was on Bilam's, so to speak, level of honor in the nations of the world would usually not personally saddle his own donkey, but Bilam himself went and saddled his donkey. What's the reason he personally did this? Rashi says it's because of his tremendous sinna, tremendous hatred for Klal Yisrael. That's why he was so eager to go and curse Klal Yisrael. And Rashi the Pasuk of Ches, Red Zeis, Rashi speaks out, Ramzalo Atmevakish Lakor Uma Hachogegas Shalosh Regalim Bashana. That specifically, Bilam wanted to uproot the nation that celebrates the 3 pilgrimage festivals of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, where we come close to Hashem and bring korbanos in front of Hashem and develop our closeness to Hashem. Bilam specifically wanted to uproot that nation who has a close relationship with Hashem. The 5th midah of Bilam is anger and rash thinking. Like, for example, one of the main parts of the parsha is an interplay between Bilam and his donkey. And at one point, Bilam says to his donkey, Vayomer Bilam la'ason pasuk chavtes, ki his halalt bi, lu yishcharv v'di ki atar ticha. That Bilam's donkey is the way Bilam sees it as being uncooperative and not moving with proper mobility, so Bilam threatens to kill his donkey. So we see from here a tremendous midah of kas and anger and rash thinking about killing the donkey that has transported him all his life. And it is his source of mobility. 6th negative midah of Bilam is lying. This is spoken out in a Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Dalet and Beis, as referenced by Rashi and Parak Chaf. In this Gemara, Bilam outwardly denies that the donkey has been his source of mobility for many years. Bilam says, all I've done is load packages on you, the donkey, and the donkey responds, no, you've ridden on me for many years. So Bilam had an attribute of sheker, of lying and falsehood. Also in this story with the donkey, we see, like Rabbi Kanstein, Mar Shiva from the 5 Towns of Moshe of Kanstein has spoken out, that Bilam had a lack of ability to be impressed by life events. For example, in Psukim Chavchas Chavtes, the pasuk says, "Vayiftach Hashem es pi ha'asun, v'atomer leBilam," and Hashem opened the mouth of the donkey and started speaking to Bilam. And then the donkey spoke, and Bilam immediately responded, "Vayomer Bilam la'asun," and Bilam said to the donkey the statement of, "Ki esalalt bi, if you wouldn't have mocked me, like, why are you mocking me? I should kill you." So what the Bali Musar point out from this interplay is that Bilam was completely unimpressed by seeing the tremendous phenomenon of a talking donkey. There's no mention in the pasuk of something like Vayishtomim Bilam, and Bilam was astonished. Just Bilam kept going on with the normal mode of conversation, as if he was a regular person. He wasn't amazed or astonished by watching the talking donkey. We see from here that Bilam had a lack of ability to be impressed by worldly events around him. 8th negative midah of Bilam was putting worldly matters into the picture instead of believing that everything comes from Hashem. For example, the Bitachon hotline on Pasuk HaBeis says that Bilam failed to realize that his donkey's lack of mobility came from Hashem. Bilam assumed that the donkey just decided to stop working properly, But really, Bilam failed to realize that the donkey's not working was from Hashem and was a sign from Hashem that he should reassess where he's going. Because where he was going was to try to curse Klal Yisrael. Also, in Pasuk Chavtes, Bilam complains to the donkey for mocking him, whereas he should have felt that the donkey mocking him, if true, really came from Hashem and not from the donkey. The ninth negative midah of Bilam is lack of akar tov, gratitude, in Pasuk Chavtes. When Bilam threatened to kill his donkey, he was displaying a lack of gratitude, a lack of akar tov, for the donkey having ridden him all his life. The 10th negative midah of Bilam, this is identified as Ayin Ra in the Mishnah in Avos Parakeh Pasuk Chaf Beis, is jealousy, kina. Bilam was a jealous person. This is another negative midah of Bilam. And the 11th negative midah of Bilam was disregard for obeying Hashem's word. This is borne out in Pasuk Chaf Beis with comment by Rav Gedalia Shor. You can find this in the Arts Chumash. That Bilam had either the hope or the outright intention of flouting Hashem's will, of going against Ratzon Hashem. Bilam had a disregard for obeying Hashem's word. Specifically, the fact that Bilam went to curse Klal Yisrael, even though Hashem did not want him to go. I will suggest an approach to link many of these midos, especially stemming from gaiva, arrogance, haughtiness, and exaggerated sense of self, from the Musar Sfarim, specifically the Mesilas Yesharim on gaiva, Orchas Tzadikim on Anava, Chovos Levavos on Hachna, and Orchas Tzadikim on gaiva and Anava. The Mishnah in Avos that we've mentioned lists 3 cardinal midos of Bilam, specifically Ayin Ra, unsatisfied with one's lot, or pursuit of Gashmias Taiva, Nefesh Chava, and Ruach Gavoa, which include haughtiness and negative character traits. So the Mishnah identifies 3 negative character traits. I will attempt to identify that really most of them come from gaiva and arrogance. We'll start by talking about the purpose of money. The main functional purpose of money is that it allows a person to buy possessions. The Orchas Tzadikim in Shar Gaiva teaches that a Bal Gaiva, an arrogant person, will feel entitled to obtaining the best and nicest of the luxuries of this world. For example, he'll feel entitled to have a jacuzzi or an indoor pool inside of his house, just because he feels he's entitled to the best because of his arrogance. Now, in order to provide oneself with the best in Olam Hazeh, in worldly matters, he needs a lot of money. Therefore, I'm suggesting that Bilam's desire for money, his nefesh chava, was not really an entity in and of itself, but rather it developed in order for him to maintain his opulent lifestyle as necessitated by his gaiva. A Bal Gaiva essentially feels that he's entitled to have whatever he wants. He feels that the word no is but a first response for him to obtain what he desires. Therefore, Bilam broke through all boundaries of accepted behavior. I'm suggesting this was not necessarily because he was a mushchas, a depraved person, but because his excessive gaiva indicated to him that he was entitled to anything and everything. Therefore, in order to suit his gaiva, he broke through boundaries and norms. Another approach involves looking at money differently. An additional purpose of money is as a status symbol. A person with more money is more well respected in some circles. Bilam's gaiva caused him to feel like he needed to be externally respected by others. A Baal Gaiva does not truly feel Chashivas B'etzem, self-valuation because he's a Tzelem Elokim, a creation of Hashem, or if he's a Jew because he has a neshama, a soul. So a Baal Gaiva lacks that internal sense of self, so therefore he needs to feel externally respected by others, and Bilam was in this category. In order to suit his Gaiva, Bilam felt the need to amass a lot of money. Not because he wanted to use that money to purchase physical items, but because he needed that money to increase his stature in society, and thereby increase his self-respect in some way via adulation from other people. And Bilam was even willing to breach the norms of society in order to attain his money, which would then increase his status. Bilam's desire to earn a house full of gold and silver, below Beisel Kesef Azav, was so great that he exhibited tremendous rizus, tremendous alacrity to carry out his tasks, as found in Pasuk Chaf Aleph with Rashi, which relates that Bilam arose in the morning and personally hitched his donkey. Like Rashi says from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Shechava Shu Ba'atzmo, that Bilam himself personally saddled his donkey. I'm suggesting that the reason why Bilam did this is because of his great desire to earn Balak's money. Because Balak offered to pay Bilam if Bilam would successfully curse Klal Yisrael. Since Bilam really wanted that money, he was so eager and he saddled the donkey himself, even though that's not the normal way for a, so to speak, honorable person to saddle one's donkey oneself. Aaron relates that Bilam tried and succeeded to seduce Klal Yisrael to do znus, to have immoral relations with Benos Moav, the daughters of Moav, in Parachaf Hey. The Shari Aaron suggests the reason for Bilam's plan is not necessarily because he hated Klal Yisrael or was a depraved person, but merely because he felt that if he could take down Klal Yisrael, he would earn a tremendous amount of money from Balak. This shows that Bilam had a tremendous desire for money. Back to the incident of Bilam saddling his donkey. So, and again, what we're saying is that Bilam's desire for money is due to his gaiva, due to his arrogance, either wanting to get physical items for himself or wanting to increase his status symbol. Back to the incident of Bilam saddling his donkey. Alternatively, Bilam may have carried out this task with great zrizas because it was the potential avenue for him to earn great honor with the nations of the world if he could successfully curse Klal Yisrael. Bilam's desire to curse Klal Yisrael was so great that he breached the normal modes of behavior and personally saddled his donkey. As we spoke about earlier, generally a person of his social stature would consider it beneath himself to saddle his donkey himself, but Bilam completely disregarded all social norms due to his great desire to complete his mission, either to earn Balak's money or to earn the honor of the nations of the world by being the one to curse Klal Yisrael. From Rashi and Parachaf Aleph, it appears that Bilam's zrizas, Bilam's alacrity in saddling his donkey, was sourced from an entirely different point of motivation, actually not stemming from gaiva of arrogance, or at least not seemingly directly stemming from arrogance. Rather, it was stemming from Bilam's great hatred of Klal Yisrael. Like Rashi says, Mikansha Sina Milkalkalas as Ashura. Rashi identifies the Sina, this hatred that Bilam had for Klal Yisrael, as the reason why Bilam personally saddled his donkey and was going out to curse Klal Yisrael. I believe that Bilam's hatred for Klal Yisrael was really based on his own desire for kavod, honor. As we started to speak about earlier, along these lines, Bilam knew internally that the greatest kavod, the greatest honor one could have, is to be an Eved Hashem, a servant of Hashem. As Chazal say, Eved Melech, Melech. One who is a servant of the king, himself is a king. And we know that there is nobody more honored than a king. Since Bilam desired to be an honored person, a very honored person, and even the most honored person, due to his jealousy, so therefore, Bilam felt that he needed to depose the Ummah, the nation, Klal Yisrael, which was full of intrinsic kavod, intrinsic honor for being servants of Hashem, and more intrinsically for being sons of Hashem, like we say in Parshas Re'eh, Banim Atem Lashem Elokechem, that you, Klal Yisrael, we are all sons of Hashem, sons or daughters of Hashem. Bilam was so eager to curse the Jews and therefore depose us of any honorable standing, so that he could left as the most honorable person. Alternatively, Bilam's hatred for Klal Yisrael stemmed from his unbridled desire to attain material items, taiva. I will suggest that Bilam was an early day liberal. He had an approach of everything is good, everything is on the table, everything is acceptable, which Rabbi Kastin says is the hallmark of the liberal agenda, this belief that everything is okay. I'm suggesting that Bilam hated Klal Yisrael because Klal Yisrael represents respecting rules and boundaries. Some things are never okay. Many other things are not okay under most circumstances. Rabbi Kastin said that liberals' hatred for Jews is because Jews represent the opposite of liberal ideology in invoking the word no in our lives. Rabbi Kastin relates a story that there was a Ben Torah who was once traveling, and he was in a food store, and he was checking through various food packages for a hechsher, kosher certification. And when he was there was another man who approached the Ben Torah and said to him, I'm also Jewish, but, I feel bad for you because you have to check through all these packages for a kosher symbol. Me, I can eat whatever I want. This man was not keeping kosher. So the Ben Torah responded to him. Next again, this man told the Ben Torah, I feel bad for you that you have to check these labels for a kosher certification. And the Ben Torah responded back to this other Jew. He said, I feel bad for you because you don't have the ability to say no in your life. My father quotes a thinker who he respects named Mr. Dennis Prager, who says that the role of the Jews is to annoy the world. The role of the Jews is to annoy the world with our ability to set rules and boundaries and say no. Because Bilam was so eager to wipe out the nation that was the opposite of his ideology, Bilam's ideology being everything is okay, and Klal Yisrael's ideology being that some things are not okay, so therefore Bilam hitched his own horse to enable him to curse Klal Yisrael and therefore get rid of the nation that was the opposite of his mindset. Since we are discussing hatred of Klal Yisrael, I will append one vart from the Parsha about how to fulfill Avas Yisrael, love of fellow Jews, from our Rashiv from Muncie, Rav Avram Braun. The Hasidic Rebbe, the Oiv Yisrael, was known for saying that in every Parsha in the Torah, there is a remez, a hint, to the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael. So his Talmidim asked him, where is this hint in Parshas Balak? So the Rebbe responded, it's very simple. The words Balak, Beis, Lamed, Kuf, stand for V'ahavta, L'reacha, Kamocha. So his Talmidim asked him, Rebbe, the vart is a little off because V'ahavta starts with a Vav, not a Beis, and Kamocha starts with a Kuf, not a Kuf. Balak is spelled Beis Lamed Kuf. So how does the vart stim? How does this make sense? So the Oiv Yisrael responded to his Talmidim that if you're going to be so makbid, that you're going to insist on the Vav is exactly a Vav and not a Beis, that the Kuf is exactly a Kuf and not a Kuf, if you're going to be so makbid, so particular, that you're going to only have Avos Yisrael for your type of Jew, for your exact Kav, then you'll never fulfill the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael. The mitzvah of Avos Yisrael is to love a wide variety of Jews, even more than just one's own specific type. And that's Rabbi Kassin teaches on the pasuk of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that one should love his reacha, which he says means even one's fellow Jew, who one does not necessarily have the same hashkafa and see eye to eye with on every issue, still to have Avos Yisrael and love even that Jew. Getting back to Bilam's midos, with regards to lying, which we identify as one of Bilam's midos, so a person who has a tremendous desire to attain physical possessions, especially if they do not care about obeying the word of Hashem, will have no problem telling mistruths in order to attain what they so desire. Now this is in a vacuum, assuming there's no fear of repercussion from human courts. I can see this in my study of the insurance exam. For most every rule that can be violated, there is always a forthcoming punishment which is the result of non-compliance. The reason for this is because due to people's great desire to earn money, the insurance profession or the lawmakers felt that people would probably violate various laws and rules of conduct were it not that they had a specific punishment for violating these laws. Assuming that Bilam did not have any sort of fear of punishment, then he would just be like the insurance professionals who would be chashad, who would be suspected of lying in order to attain money. On the other hand, if a person is not as much of a Baal Gaiva and does not have such a tremendous desire to obtain physical items, then he will not be so moved to lie in order to amass more. With regards to anger, kas, there's a strong corollary between Gaiva and kas. A person who feels like he is entitled to the biggest and best is likely to fall into anger if he does not receive 5-star treatment. On the other hand, a person who is sameach b'chalko, content with his lot, and mistapik b'muad, satisfied with a little bit, has no expectations of grandeur, and therefore he will not fall into anger even if he does not receive the absolute best in matters of this world. Even though I am suggesting that really kas, anger, is an outgrowth of gaiva, arrogance, actually the Igeres Ramban learns the other way. He says that first anger is the first midah to work on, and then one can work on gaiva, arrogance. Another midah of Bilam which we identified is lack of akaras hatov, lack of gratitude. It is natural that a person who feels that he is entitled to grandiose gashmias, to the best in this world, which we said is a result of Bilam's gaiva, his arrogance, believing that he is entitled to the best. So if a person believes he's entitled to the best, he may not feel hakaras hatov, he may not feel gratitude for what he actually does have. Since it is coming to me anyways, why should I be moder or note or have gratitude for its existence? On the other hand, a humble person in Anav believes that nothing is coming to me, so therefore whatever I do receive, I am grateful for. That's talking about gratitude to Hashem and gratitude to other people. The exemplar for hakaras hatov in the Torah is Leah Imenu, Leah, our foremother. When her fourth son was born, she exclaimed, "Hapam oda es Hashem." This time I will thank Hashem. Rashi relates that with this childbirth, Leah feels she was given more than she deserved. Therefore, she broke out at this point in euphoric praise and thanks of Hashem. as opposed to the first three children, which she, on her level, to some extent erroneously felt were coming to her to some degree, so therefore she was not Makar Tov. She was not grateful to the same extent as she was when she delivered her fourth child, which she realized was more than her portion. We see from the story of Leah that when one receives more than their portion, more than what they feel they deserved, there is a siba, there's a cause for akar satov and gratitude, whereas if a person receives what they feel they're expecting, they may not necessarily have the same level of gratitude. Bilam, whatever he had in Gashmias, he felt he was entitled to, therefore he was not Makar Tov, he was not grateful for. On the topic of Bilam not being nisbal, not being impressed by his surroundings, a person who is so egotistical and only thinks about themselves has little bandwidth to pay heed to recognize events outside of their immediate Dalet Amos personal bubble. Therefore, Bilam had little headspace to be impressed by the talking donkey, and instead just single-mindedly carried on the conversation, trying to accomplish his aim of getting the donkey to move. On the other hand, a humble person who thinks about Hashem and thinks about other people, it'll be much more easy for such a person to notice events going on around them. As far as jealousy, an arrogant person wants the biggest and best. He cannot bear to see someone bigger or greater than he. In Ruchnius, spirituality, it is acceptable for a person to be jealous of others' achievements. It's called kinas sofrim, but only for the purpose of motivating oneself to reach greater heights in Torah and mitzvahs. A humble person is content with what he has in material matters and is happy for other successes. Because Bilam did not care about obeying Hashem's word, he was okay with being poritz geder, breaching boundaries, going all out for money and physical items, being arrogant, hating Klal Yisrael, and lying. Had Bilam wanted to obey Hashem's word, he would have worked on curtailing these midos rows, negative midos. However, since he did not care about pleasing Hashem, he was fine with letting his midos rows, his negative midos, run amok. A person who is not intent on fulfilling Hashem's word or welcoming Hashem into his life is unlikely to see hashgacha pratis, how Hashem is planning and orchestrating and carrying out world events and events in his life. Therefore, it makes sense that Bilam would view the insult from the donkey as coming from the donkey itself, rather than being a specific message from Hashem to Bilam. A 12th negative midah found in Parshas Balak is lack of busha. According to the Orchos Tzadikim, busha is shamefacedness at doing the wrong things in front of people and ultimately before Hashem. And we'll illustrate. When Zimri, the Shimonite tribal leader, had relations in public with a non-Jewish woman, Zimri displayed a lack of busha. For one, he was willing to have a private affair in the public eye. He was not shamefaced by doing this in front of other Jews. And two, Zimri was unafraid of being ashamed before Hashem at desecrating the name of Hashem in the public eye. A person with healthy busha will avoid being embarrassed by other people under most circumstances. He will avoid doing things that will incur the embarrassment from other people. And more importantly, he will refrain from engaging in an action which causes him shame from his Avinu Shebashamayim, his Father in heaven. This includes actions both done in private and in public. Hashem attempted to teach Bilam a number of lessons during the Parsha. One lesson in Hachna, humility, that Bilam received was when he realized that he lacked the power to articulate the words that were in his brain, and that instead Hashem was remote controlling what words would come out of Bilam's mouth. Bilam was also taught the lesson that no individual can negatively impact another without Hashem willing it to happen. Bilam tried to harm Klal Yisrael with his words, but Hashem prevented those words from reaching the airspace. Instead, the brachos that Hashem wanted to come into the world and to the Torah came to fruition. Rabbi Katzenstein sums it up by saying, Bilam was unwilling to live as an Eved Hashem. Bilam was unwilling to live as a servant of Hashem. I would like to share some practical guidance from the Mesilas Yesharim for a Ben Torah to maintain anava, humility in his Torah learning, and refrain from having any gaiva or arrogance seep into his efforts. The case study we're discussing is someone who learns Torah, but it can really be applied to many, many areas. One, a Ben Torah needs many entities other than himself to provide him his chachma. For example, he needs Rebbeim, Sfarim, Chavrusas, Talmidim, all to help him achieve his chachma, to achieve his level of understanding. If a person realizes that I did not achieve this level on my own, that's a siba, a cause to not feel any sense of haughtiness. Second, if a person has learned a lot of Torah, he should view himself like an eagle who flies or an ox who carries a lot of weight. This is why he was born with these faculties, in order to learn this Torah. Lakach notzarta. So therefore, when a person learns Torah, he should not feel arrogant about his learning, because this is the purpose he was created. Just like those animals don't feel haughty for doing what they're supposed to do, so too a Ben Torah who learns should feel status quo, but not arrogant for doing what he's supposed to do. Third, it could be that even if a person has reached the Madrega, the level where he is the Gadol Hador, the greatest rabbi of the generation, but he could still believe that it could be that if another person had been endowed with the same faculties and ability to learn and opportunities that I had, then it could be he would have reached my Madrega or even higher. So therefore, with this in mind, even the Gadol Hador, the greatest rabbi of the generation, there's no impetus for him to feel haughty. And this is the reason that Rav Moshe Feinstein treated everyone else he met with great respect, because he felt it could be that other person, would they have been in his shoes, would have achieved even more than he did. Lastly, if a person has a lot of Torah knowledge, he should view it as if he is just one part of Hashem's world. Hashem gave some people wealth, financial wealth, in order to share with others. Hashem gave some people physical strength in order to help others. Hashem gave some people musical talent in order to share it with others. So too, Hashem allowed some people to become big in Torah in order that such a person can share it with other people. A Ben Torah can view that the reason why he's amassed so much Torah knowledge is one reason is that he can share it with other Jews. Viewed through these lenses, a Ben Torah does not view himself as especially important over other people, more so than other Jews, but rather he is one part of Hashem's mosaic. He will maintain his anava, his humility, which Chazal say is a prerequisite to Torah learning. Chazal say that a Talmud Chacham needs to have 1/64th, or 1.6% of Gaiva, Gemara and Sota. Note the minute amounts, and only for a Talmud Chacham. 1 out of 64, 1.6% of some degree of arrogance. Moreover, it is questionable to whom this teaching applies. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Gadol Hador, one of the great rabbis in America in the 20th century, himself felt that the Mazikim of Kovno did not consider him to be a Talmud Chacham. If Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky is not a Talmud Chacham, then who is? So it's very questionable who this teaching of 1/64th of Gaiva even applies to. In the Mishnah in Avos, Parak Daled, Mishnah Daled, instructs us to be humble. It uses the words ma'od ma'od, very much so in distancing us from self-aggrandizement. I would like to provide an unusual, but perhaps highly effective tactic for developing anava, humility, for those who are athletically inclined. which is to play the sport of volleyball. And could be there are other sports who are similar, perhaps we'll suggest maybe doubles tennis or pickleball. But for now, we'll talk about the sport of volleyball. My Rebbe from Muncie, Rabbi Yared Vitters, quoted from a kiruv professional who said that if a kiruv retreat is going to have some sort of athletic component, the optimal sport to play is volleyball. The question is, why is volleyball preferred over classic American sports like baseball, basketball, and football? Rabbi Vitters said that volleyball is unique in that any one player cannot have an overriding and overly significant impact on the results of the game. Because of the nature of the sport of volleyball, the ball may be hit to any area of the playing surface. Even if a person is an exceptional athlete, there are many times in the game where he does not have the opportunity to touch the ball. He may be able to work in conjunction with other players, but sometimes he is not involved. Moreover, my father said that on any given volley, an average of 3 players are needed to touch the ball. This means that even if a person of outstanding athleticism is able to touch the ball, but he still needs other players to either position it or put the ball over the net. So because of this, the fact that an outstanding player, the ball may not be hit to him, and 2, even if it is hit to him, he still needs other players to put it over the net, this de-emphasizes the importance of any individual and increases reliance on other people. In contrast, in baseball or basketball, a single player can score points on his own, runs or points on his own. In football, 2 dominant players, quarterback and receiver, can overtake the game. Therefore, these sports are not optimal to developing the sense that one needs something other than oneself. As opposed to volleyball, which does foster a sense of not being able to do it on one's own, therefore it fosters some sort of dependence on others and to some degree some subservience to others. This is why volleyball is chosen to play at a kiruv convention, because it gradually inclines the players to think outside of themselves and eventually think about other people, and eventually to think about Hashem. In the context of a nava, a person who plays volleyball has the opportunity to recognize that no matter my talents or abilities, I cannot conquer the goal alone. I need the help of other people, resources, and ultimately Hashem. From a different angle, in volleyball, there is no left fields. Every player has a vital role, because the ball could be hit directly to him, with no other player being able to bounce the ball back to him. He cannot simply rely on the superstar player to bounce the ball every time when the ball is hit in the direction of the weaker player. For a weaker player, volleyball contains the lesson that every yid is chashuv, meaning that every person has a vital role on Hashem's team, and therefore it behooves each person to maximize his potential the best he can. Because the volleyball team cannot succeed with just one star player. Every player needs to be able to at least hold his weight and be able to bump the ball when it comes to him. So too, in Klal Yisrael, every person is needed to use his own strength and abilities to perform his avoda, his service, in the best way he can to contribute to Hashem's team. Therefore, if you have a sport inkling and a variety of sports to choose from, the choice for a person who's interested in developing himself in anava, in humility, would seem to be volleyball. My mother suggested that doubles tennis has similar qualities and that each player needs to rely on the other one to be able to hit the ball back when it is hit to that other person. In doubles tennis, one person cannot dominate the game. At least not as easily, given that he needs the partner. and I believe the up-and-coming sport of pickleball has a similar quality. So therefore, it seems like doubles tennis and pickleball would also be good options to develop anava, if one is athletically inclined and is playing sports. One of my talmidim is a recovering alcoholic of 16 years. When I shared this year with him on this topic of anava, he informed me that humility is actually a central theme of the Alcoholics Anonymous AA program. He told me that if a person feels that he is the center of the universe, then he will not humble himself to go sober. On the other hand, if a person accepts a higher being, is subservient to that entity, and prays that entity to help him go sober, then there is a strong likelihood he'll be able to go sober. My Talmud tells me that the renowned Rabbi Dr. Abraham J. Twersky says that there's not a word in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, that does not come from Torah or Talmud. Meaning Rabbi Twersky is testifying that the whole AA program has its roots in Torah and Talmud. And certainly the concept of humility and recognizing a creator and humbling oneself before that entity is amongst them. May be zocha to learn from all of Bilam's midos ros, negative attributes, and embrace the midah of anava and hachna, humility, which the Ramban says is the choicest of all midos. Through this undertaking, may be zocha to achieve great heights in our avodas Hashem and tikkun hamidos, service of itself. And with the 3 weeks upon us are approaching, may be zocha to receive the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, when we'll realize the tefillah v'sein chalkeinu b'sor secha, that we receive our true portions in the Torah, and Be'ez Hashem we will accept it in the proper manner. Be well.